All right, episode 109, P. Hotshot Scott.
Why am I nervous?
I'm very well. He's the boss.
I know.
I still think he could reach through the phone or whatever we're doing this on and strangle us,
I know.
or call us into the corner office. How would you express to our listeners who this next guest is?
Well, to me, when I first started as an intern in 1995, he was the boss of all 3 radio stations that were there. Nobody was higher than this person on the phone that we have.
Okay,
he was
the
it.
boss's boss, right?
Yeah.
And so he was somewhat responsible for you and Rob Tepper going into the mornings at Cube.
Yep.
He was somewhat, we're going to find out the level of responsibility that he's going to take of hiring me from Washington, D.C. to come and replace the fabulous sports babe. Ladies and gentlemen, here he is, the aforementioned from last episode, Michael O'Shea. How's Michael O'Shea doing?
Hey, I'm doing great, but I had just one question for you first, Mitch.
Yeah, sure.
Are you still a punk?
I'll answer for you off the air, Michael.
Now, why would you say so? We've had such good times together, Mike.
Listen, we used to market your punkness. That was what brought you to fame and fortune. Fame anyway. At Sports Radio KJR.
Oh my God!
And no, you're let's call it edge.
Okay.
Your edge has always been very successful, and it's really what allowed KJR Sports Radio to kind of put its head above the waterline. It was, I'm not saying floundering, because we had the Supersonics, and we were owned by, at that time, before my company bought them, we were owned by Barry Ackerley. A lot of billboards in town and a lot of media, a couple of other radio stations, and but KJR Sports Radio was just kind of limping along, and we felt we really needed to kind of juice it up another level. And I was actually, the story real quick, was I was actually attending a broadcast conference, I think in Scottsdale, and one of the representatives there was from WTEM in Washington, D.C.
Wow.
Yeah.
And they were they were doing a presentation on sports radio in the nation's capital. And they said, and here's our lineup, and they gave the full-time lineup, and they said, and we got this hotshot guy who's just terrific, named with the last name of Levy, but we can't find anything for him to do. He's filling in weekends and stuff like this. And I raised my hand and I said, "Can I have his phone number?" And I put a call in, or I had my program director Tom Lee put a call in, and we talked to Mitch Levy and said, "This is going to maybe sound like it's right out of left field, but how would you like to leave Washington D.C. and move from the exact opposite other tip of the country out to Seattle?"
Well, you call it fame and fortune. I have a different way of putting that. I call it infamy and poverty, as opposed to fame and
Well, hey, Mitch, welcome to radio.
Right.
So, but anyway, no, that was it was in the night. You can probably tell me exactly the year, 97 or something like that, Mitch.
94, yeah.
And that was really the fuse that lit the success of Sports Radio KJR.
You're being nice.
You came in with taking the morning show, which in radio is always the calling card for the radio station. Most number of listeners, most people listening at that time of day, and you really beefed it up. You did a lot of really fun stuff on the air, and you had that Mitch Levy edge, and got people talking about us, got advertisers talking about us, and pretty soon we started building our revenue and our ratings, and that was a wonderful time in my life, because it was my first period in radio station ownership. I had been a local general manager there in Seattle for something like 20 years at that point, and put together an investment group to buy the station I had been the GM of for 20 years, which was Cube, K-U-B-E. And then our investment banker in Chicago said, "You know what? My client Barry Ackerley is looking for a partner to come in who understands the radio business. He understands the outdoor advertising business and has the Supersonics. And so this fella from the First National Bank of Chicago introduced me to Barry and my partners. And it took us about 6-8 months to get a deal done, but we created a three-way partnership and acquired the radio stations. And I came in as the general manager of KJR AM, and then we created KJR FM. And of course, we added the station Cube 93 that I'd been running for, at that point, 18 or 20 years. So it was a powerful radio dynamic because we had play-by-play sports with the Supersonics. We had sports radio, which does exceptionally well with advertising and advertisers. And then we had the two greatest music franchises in the market. One was the younger hip-hop top 40 sound, and the other was this, what I guess now is called classic hits. We invented that format, by the way, with KJR FM, and it was just a wonderful time until Clear Channel came along and said, "Hey, you guys, we want to make you all rich," and they made us an offer we couldn't refuse. And so, after some years of ownership, we sold to Clear Channel, and we all kind of went in our different directions.
All right, Hotshot, we got to ask Michael a few questions. As you listen to him, you probably wonder, why was this guy not on the air? Why was he running the stations?
Right.
He should have been on the air. At Hotshot, I want you to ask Michael O'Shea.
Okay.
He had, soon after I came to town in 94, 95. Now, my memory, I hope it doesn't escape me here. He had a son. Ask him what he named his son after I came to town in 94, 95. Ask him.
Hey, Michael, we want to confirm your son's name shortly after Mitch came to town. Is there any truth to that?
There is. My number 4 son, I've got 4 sons. They all live in Seattle. My number 4 son, youngest son, is Mitchell Allen. And
that's my middle name, by the way. That's my middle name.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And young Mitch graduated University of Arizona 2 years ago, and
wow.
Is over in Bellevue working as a financial advisor at this point, and I think he lapped me in salary.
Well, let me say this. I've told this story before, but it's been a long time since Michael and I have visited, and Michael may not even remember this. He may not recall. He may not. I'm sure you knew at one point. But the original show, I came in to actually do the midday show when the Sports Babe left, and then you guys moved me to mornings.
That is correct,
At the same time that you moved Rob Tepper and this guy right here, Hotshot Scott, to mornings on KUBE Cube Radio. But originally, you guys were bringing in people to audition for. It was obvious that the Sports Babe was not going to get along anymore, and she was going to go. And you were bringing guys in to audition for the new midday show, and you brought in a fella by the name of Peter Brown. Now, that name you might not recall that name, but he came in and he did an audition, and he did 2 days worth of auditions, I believe. And the second, he was just cruising. You guys were going to hire him. Tom Lee wanted him. Your deputy Bob Case wanted him. And then the second day, he decided to go off on a tangent on who the hell decided to put these Sonics games on pay-per-view, and he went on. He didn't do his homework on who the co-owners of the radio station were. And as the story goes, he said, whoever the owner of the Sonics, who's the guy? And he started calling him names. And as Tom Lee tells the story, Tom Lee couldn't stop it fast enough. The phone rang in Tom Lee's office, and he picked up the phone and he said, "This is Tom Lee," and the voice on the other end was, "It's Barry. He's not our man." And click.
I do have vague recollection of that, and your imitation of Mr. Ackerley is spot on. That's exactly the way he sounded, and I've had a few conversations with him before his demise, very similar to that. But I didn't remember Peter's name, but I do know that we tried several people on that shift, and but that's a great story, Mitch.
I can picture Tom Lee pulling out a crumpled number of Mitch Levy's out of the garbage can. Shoot shoot, I still have it. Good.
Okay, so the other question we want to ask you on how the relationship worked with a radio station, and you guys were radio people. Barry wasn't a radio guy, but he had his hand in the cookie jar. But I asked you before we started recording. You don't remember, so I'm gonna tip your memory a little bit. My first ever Sonics game. So I get hired by you guys. I start in January of 1995. And Bob Case and Tom Lee says, we want to take you back to the corner office to meet the Grand Poobah sitting in his chair in the corner office. And so they took me in to see Michael O'Shea, our guest on 109P. And Michael says to me, it's great to have you. I've heard so much about you. And he's saying all the nights. He says, I'll tell you what, why don't you join? You've never been to a Sonics game? I said, I've never been to a Sonics game. And he said, why don't you join me? And I'll take you to your first Sonics game. Well, in 1995, Michael, the Coliseum was under repair.
Yep.
And so you took Mitch. I thought I was going down the street. You said, okay, I'll pick you up at a certain time. And you picked me up at a certain time. I'm thinking I'm going 5-10 minutes. And we start driving.
Yeah, we go to the Tacoma Dome, right?
What time did he pick you up?
He picked me up like at about 4:30, 5 o'clock. I was like, wait a second, Michael, the damn game doesn't start till 7 o'clock. He says, not only is it going to take us a while to get there. I didn't know what Michael was doing. I thought maybe this is the way it all ends. And so and then if you didn't think I thought that at that point, then he lays on me. We're going to make a stop on the way to the Tacoma Dome. I want to see if you can guess where you took me on the way to the Tacoma Dome, Michael.
It wasn't Ivers, was it?
No. You took me to go see an airplane.
At Renton Airport, I believe.
You took me. I said, what is this guy doing? He says to me, I'm going to take you to see a little airplane that I own. He made me get out of the car. He made me get into the airplane. Now I'm saying, okay, this is out of, why did I agree to this job? I mean, who is this man? Is he truly? You made me sit in the plane with you. You put headsets on me that muffled out all the sound, noise canceling headsets.
Yep.
And that's what we did on the way to the Tacoma Dome.
Did he fire the plane up or no?
I can't remember whether if he fired the plane up,
jumped.
I would have jumped out. I was not going up with Michael O'Shea. Are you still flying, Michael?
You know, I am. I have been flying. I've got over 4,000 hours,
wow.
And I've got an instrument rating and a C rating and a twin engine rating, and I have a little Mooney airplane now that I keep at the Charles Schultz Memorial Airport, which Charles is the man who invented peanuts, and he did all of his peanuts drawings right here in Santa Rosa, and they've named the airport after him. And I've got my little Mooney 4-seater 200-mile-an-hour airplane sitting out there. And last summer I made 2 trips to Seattle in it, and round trip. And so no, I'm still flying. It's been a passion of mine for, like I say, for decades and decades. I think I've got over 50 years of actual flying. But it doesn't surprise me that I would take you to the airport because I loved aviation, and it very likely, if we did not go flying, it was probably because we had either time restraints, or you just flat out said, hey, I'm a little nervous about this. because many times I would take new employees on an aerial tour of Seattle.
Wow.
And we'd fly around the Space Needle, and we'd fly over Mount Rainier or Mount St. Helens. And it was always a real good orientation to the Great Northwest. But yeah, that doesn't surprise me at all. And that was on the way to the Tacoma Dome. and I do remember those games down there for, I think, a year, maybe 2 years down there.
Hotshot did not receive that treatment as my hiring at the old New Century Media. I was not cool enough to get that treatment. But he owns radio stations still. He owns a plane. Are you looking for a morning show?
Okay.
I mean, God, we'll be down.
Okay, so there's a lot of people in our audience that would be thrilled to hear, Michael, you shed some light on the relationship. How does it come that Barry Ackerley and O'Shea and his partners are involved in the radio station? Okay, sports radio was a big passion of Barry. We all know that. He listened. He was very, very invested, both literally and figuratively, in the radio station. What was it like to be partnered up with the owner of the Sonics on the station that played the Sonics?
Well, the great thing about it is that when we, and I say we, it was me, and it was, as you mentioned, Bob Case, who was one of our key program people, and a couple of sales key folks that we had, and a partner that I had, who was actually based in Los Angeles, but he was the guy that put the deals together. And again, it came down to this banker we had with First National Bank of Chicago, who said, "I want you to meet Barry Ackerley." And it was right at the time, Mitch, when the FCC was allowing multiple ownership in the same market. Up to that point, an operator, a radio station owner, could legally own no more than one AM and one FM in a market. And then in about that mid-90s, when Clinton signed the Telecommunications Act, and it totally revised cellular telephones, but a rider to that, a little piece on the sidebar of the Telecom Act, was radio station ownership, and it allowed multiple station ownership within the market. And our banker said, Barry loves sports. He just bought the Seattle Supersonics. They're going to build a new arena, or they're going to remodel the existing arena. And the only thing is, Barry does not have a good history in running radio. And so here's an opportunity for me and my partners to come in. We had invested many, many years in Seattle radio, had a lot of successes. And we could be the operating partner, whereas Barry would be the general partner, and essentially the money behind it all.
Right.
And so there are times in life when the planets align, and it's just one of those moments that you just have to be able to take advantage of. And this was a case where the FCC was opening up new ownership. We were an up-and-coming group. We had just purchased Cube. That was our only station, and now we had an opportunity to buy other stations in our market. And you had KJR Sports Radio with the Supersonics, and you had this brand new FM that was doing nothing but elevator music, and we had a chance to really develop 95.7, which we named KJR FM. It was K-Light, KLTX when we walked in the door, and we actually convinced the FCC to allow us to go back to 3 calls, KJR, with the FM suffix on it, and we took the ratings went skyrocketing. Of course, the Sonics were doing well at that time. That was George Carl, and it was Sean Kemp and Gary Payton.
Great time.
And it was just a great time. Yeah. The new Key Arena was just being refurbed, and we were there. It was right about the time that the Sonics made the run, and we got to sit courtside at the NBA championship with Michael Jordan and the Chicago Bulls playing the Supersonics. It was all in that wonderful era. And we built the ratings and the revenue up, and again made it such a successful operation that and Barry Ackerley really kept his hands off. And I believe it was the success we had with the FM, with KJR FM, that proved to Barry that we were not just a one-trick pony, that we could come in and actually create. We took a station that was ranked number 37 in the market, and we made it number 2, 3, or 4, depending on the demo and the day part. And many of the same things happened on KJR. I found Rob Tepper doing some satellite all-night show out of Las Vegas, and just thought he was stupendous. He was doing sports talk, and put him, if you recall, initially on the all-night show on KJR.
Correct. Yeah,
or the late night show.
It was Sports Fan Radio Network out of Las Vegas.
That's right. It was Sports Fan Radio Network.
I used to run the board for it, so I remember.
And we brought Rob in to do nights, and at the time, I had Charlie and Ty doing the morning show on Cube, and we had just put KJR FM together, and we needed a morning show, and Charlie and Ty were perfect for that. And so they switched over to the FM, KGR FM,
right,
and continued success. And then we took a chance. We flipped a coin and took a chance and moved the T-Man up to Cube 93, and he went on to have huge success there. So it was a case of winning a couple of 3 World Series in a row, and nothing lasts forever, because at that point things were were changing. The community was changing. This was right after the WTO riots. Also, Seattle was starting to change. We had Clear Channel Radio come to us, and they just made us an offer that we couldn't refuse.
Was Barry involved when Clear Channel made you the offer, or was he not involved anymore?
No, he was involved. He was very involved, and
Okay.
and he had a CFO named Dennis Curley,
Sure.
who was also very involved. And Dennis was a brilliant financial guy, and the Ackerley Corporation. And we had Bill Ackerley, and we had Chris Ackerley, and the other Ackerley twin, Ted.
Yeah.
They were all very involved, and they loved the idea that we had created success on 2 FMs, and now we had taken sports radio KJR to a higher level, and so to the Ackerley people, we were looked at. We meaning the radio music people were looked at as kind of the genies in the bottle, and so we had a great relationship. I have absolutely nothing bad to say about Barry Ackerley. He was a wonderful gentleman to us, and I know the world lost him to a heart condition some years back, but we had a great run, and I still look back on that time, not only in my personal life but in my professional life. It's just, it was just Camelot. It was just a wonderful, wonderful period, and Mitch in the morning was at the tip of the spear.
I look back on that time too with just the fondest of memories, professionally and personally. But Mitch has often talked about when he started on his morning show, or when he started on the midday show, he had trouble getting traction at first. He was kind of down on himself. He didn't think it was going to work. Was there ever a moment for you, Michael, where you're thinking, I don't know, man, I don't know if we brought the right guy in, or did you believe in him the whole time? And you can be honest. He won't hurt his feelings.
You know what? Let me tell you the point at which I was convinced that it was a great move and that Mitch would be our, long-term solution for sports radio. And it was when he came up with the idea of, I think you called it the bigger dance, isn't that right?
Oh boy.
Oh God, yes, I did.
And not just talking about balls and strikes and touchdowns and 3-pointers, but bringing, for a sports radio audience of largely men aged 25 to 54, bringing in the babes worked. And the bigger dance was, I can't remember the various brackets you had, but you had some very key brackets in there, and it was a great time. But our success was very much led by Mitch's success on the morning show.
Oh, you're very nice.
And
Thank you.
I still, my oldest son, I talked about my youngest son, Mitch. My oldest son, Ben, used to follow your show just religiously, Mitch, and it's going to be a real fun time for me to text him tonight and tell him that I was on your podcast, and I'll probably have to send him a link to it. But no, I've got family members that have been big fans of yours over the years too, and so you do have a mutual admiration society.
Well, let me just say to end this that you're very nice. You're kind of remembering it in a very nice way, and I appreciate that very, very, very much. I will say this. I mean, it's obvious to all of us who have participated that at some point in this business, I always say this, people ask me, how'd you get started? How'd you end up in Seattle, whatever. In this business, it takes luck as much, probably more than anything else, more than talent, more than skill. You've got to be in the right place at the right time, and somebody out there has got to be willing to take a shot on you.
Yeah.
And the story that Michael tells of going to the dinner and hearing about me and calling me, I mean, look, I could have been Bob Costas. I could have been Howard Cosell. If somebody named Michael O'Shea doesn't reach out or take a shot on an East Coast guy. I mean, remember, when I came here, and Rob Tepper the same way. When we came here, we were not Seattle. I mean, this is why we struggled, or I struggled at the beginning. People who heard me for the first time in Seattle were like, okay, where did this guy come from? Because send him back. Do we get return postage on this? I mean, send him back. And it took some balls for somebody here in the Pacific Northwest, namely Michael, Barry with his stamp of approval, and Bob Case and Tom Lee. It took people to say, hey, let's give the young guy a shot. Let's see what was the worst that could happen, Michael? It wouldn't work, and 6 months later you could bring in another guy, right? Wasn't going to be the end of the world.
Yeah, we never really looked at it quite that acutely. It was more than anything. It's a gut feeling. You asked about why I'm not on the radio. I was on the radio for 20 years. I did mornings in Dallas for 7 years as a disc jockey on a station that literally had a 30 share, and on AM. But that was in the era of AM Top 40.
From the Wax and Stacks, it's Michael on the mic.
Yeah, and I was on the air in Toledo. I was on the air in Lansing. I was on the air in Springfield, Illinois, which was my hometown. So I over the years, I became an aficionado of talent. I felt that local radio had one thing that nobody else could do, and we've seen this happen in the era of Spotify and Pandora and Sirius satellite radio. The one thing that local radio could present that nobody else could would be local personalities that are identifying with local occurrences and being a part of the local community, and so when we would find somebody that could dig in and get engaged in the events of the community and things that were happening, and sports radio is just one great way to reflect on that. So no, we never thought we'd come in and try you for 6 months. We figured we figured you were good for 10 years anyway. So yeah, but
25 years later,
yeah, exactly.
Michael, it is so. I mean, I haven't heard your voice in so long. Every once in a while, your name pops into my mind. I remember that you named your son Mitch. I remember that you have 4 boys. I'm sending down the line to California all my very, very best and my profound thanks for all that you did for me and Hot Shot and Rob Tepper and all the rest of us over the years. Thanks so much.
I appreciate all you've been to my success over the decades too, Mitch and Scott, and you mentioned Rob. I was real proud of him. I am real proud of him. I'm sorry he's not in radio now, and again, things happen in the business that sometimes are unforeseen, and he's now back in the East Coast again, but he seems to be very happy. But it's been my pleasure to have known you over the years. I'm very excited about having Scott send me a link to this podcast so I can send it to my family.
I will indeed. Thank you, Michael.
Thanks,
Great
Mike.
to visit with you. Talk to you down the line. Thanks so much.
See you now. So long, guys.